Hey everybody, Chad Taylor here. Got an awesome guest tonight, Mr. Nate Wolfe. Had the pleasure of meeting him last month in Ohio at the Take on the World 2018 conference. And since then, he and I have been in contact. And what a fantastic guest! He's my first guest on this channel,
Thank you.
and he's just a very big blessing. So I'm honored and humbled to have him here. And without any further ado, here's Nate. Nate, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good, Chad. With the events that have transpired the last month almost, especially since the conference, have just been amazing. And of course, what I'm going to share tonight, at least in some detail, just the past 24, 48 hours have been just crazy and uh, roller coaster ride of emotions. But I've never been so prayed up about something before in my life. And so there were some butterflies and some stomach churning and a little bit of fear and worry, but uh, it works. It's working out in a way I could never imagine. So I know there'll be challenges. I know that Satan is not going to be happy with this and there's going to be hard days, but I'm so overwhelmed right now with the response. Between prayers, personal phone calls that I've received, uh, things on happening on social media, that just multiple messages that people are praying for me and for the truth. And so I'm just extremely feeling blessed and overwhelmed, but in a
Yeah.
good way so far. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, and for those of you guys that are unaware of what's going on right now, um, you've been a pastor for 20 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been in full time ministry, either youth and family ministry for a couple years starting out, and then since 2000 and let's see, since 2003, I've been in full time pulpit preaching and teaching. But I've been in some form of paid or volunteered ministry for about 24 years now. So,
Wow. And then the event yesterday that you called me in the morning yesterday,
yeah.
and so why don't you tell the event that happened, and then I'd love to hear your backstory, some testimony
Okay.
leading you up to how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah. Let's let everybody off the hook first, and then we could go back. So I've been with a church in Ohio for about 7.5 years. I think Father's Day was our 7 year anniversary, and have a pretty good relationship with my leadership, the elders there, and a good relationship with most people in the church. And I got a text message on Friday morning at 8:05 a.m. and it was just from one elder, and it said, "Nate, the elders, meaning all five of them, are going to meet with you at the church building at 9 o'clock." And you know, this isn't my first rodeo. This isn't, I wasn't born yesterday, so red flags immediately. And I knew that going to this conference, this Take on the World 18 conference, and starting to get to a point where eventually people were going to find out, and I was going to get to the point where I just started needing to share. So I figured either A, right away, I thought I was getting fired. And then I backed off just a little bit about that thought. And I thought, well, wait a second, I don't know yet. So maybe they just heard some things and they're starting to freak out, and they'll just confirm with me. They just want to talk. So I thought, okay, because I had been praying that either one of two things would happen. That either I would maybe be afforded some opportunity to broach the subject, and specifically biblical cosmology, and have some opportunity to maybe share with the leaders and then the church. But the other thought was, okay, the more likely thought is perhaps that I would get fired. So uh, so I called one of the elders who I'm closest with, and I said, I just got this text, and I said, I don't like what I'm seeing. I said, I don't like ambushes, and this feels like an ambush. And I said, I'm not going to meet with you guys unless you tell me what it is we're meeting about. So he said, well, let me let me get back to you. So I got another phone call, and he basically just said, we're going to be at the building at 9, and it's up to you if you come or not. And so I said, so it is an ambush. And his exact words were, yes, this is an ambush. So at that point, I thought, if I don't get fired, if somehow I'm not fired, it's going to be at least a very uncomfortable battle of some kind. And my wife was on her way to work, and I called her and I said, I got like 30 minutes before this deal. And she's been so supportive. She said, well, I'm turning the car around and I'll meet you in the church parking lot. She says, there's no way I'm going to work and not supporting you. Uh, so I showed up at the building, and the elders were standing outside in the parking lot, and they didn't make eye contact, but they definitely saw that my wife got out of the car. And so that was reassuring that she was there with me. And she went inside and prayed in another room, and I went into a private room and met with the elders. And I was really shocked, because what ended up happening was, instead of maybe a tense discussion, but some questions coming at me, there were no questions. Um, the first thing was that we had a prayer, and I thought, okay, this is a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I felt much better at that point. I thought, okay, maybe I'm overreacting. And then one elder spoke up, and he basically said, with no other discussion or questions or clarification, he said, it has come to our attention that on August 24th through the 26th, you attended the Take on the World 18 conference in Ohio. And I said, yes, that's true. I was on approved vacation, and my wife and I went to that conference. And I can't remember the exact words that were said, but basically it was like this. Well, we've been on the website, we've watched the videos, and we cannot have a minister who has that association. And we cannot let you in the pulpit Sunday. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. And I said, when have I, in 7.5 years, taught anything that was unbiblical, untrue? When have I caused any, unnecessary conflict or drama? And they just wouldn't answer my question. And that's because they couldn't answer that I'd ever done that. So I tried to keep engaged, and then I basically had a piece of paper shoved towards me that was basically saying you're terminated. And I couldn't get any discussion going, because at least one of the elders was saying, well, it doesn't matter, because this is a done deal. And so I read the paper, and basically they just said, you're being terminated, and we're going to give you a few weeks of severance, and we want your keys, and you got to be out by, have your stuff out of your office by, next week. And I thought, you know what? There's nothing I can do about this situation at that point. So I just said, okay, I'll agree to that. And I said, but the one thing is I'm not turning my keys in until I have all my personal items out of the office. I said, it appears I have lots of time on my hands now. So I said, give me 1-2 hours and I'll have everything moved out. And when I'm done, I'll turn everything in. And to their credit, they said, okay, we'll trust you with the keys and everything. So, that's basically how things went down. It was only about a 5-minute meeting. And then they all kind of huddled up in a room, and were, continuing some discussion. And so that's when I told my wife what happened. And the funny thing is, there was a doorbell ring, the front of the church building. Somebody came and rang the doorbell. And I don't know if I was just in shock, or just, to go ahead and answer the door, because where my wife was when I told her what happened, and I had to walk past the front door, and we have glass doors. So the door, and there's a gentleman standing there in a suit and tie, and he had a folder in his hand. I thought, okay, some kind of salesman or whatever, but he was actually with a church directory, like a pictorial directory company.
Mm.
And he asked to speak to the minister. He says, "Are you the minister?" And all I could think of was, "Well, I'm not anymore. I just got fired, you know." And he just kind of looked at me stunned for a moment, and then something interesting happened. He just said, "Can I pray for you?" And I didn't even know
Wow.
this guy's name. He didn't even know who I was. And he just stopped and prayed for me right in that doorway. And I was just blown away by that, because that told me about, this man, that where his heart was, because he was just totally sideswiped by me. And the first thing he thought of was, this man needs prayer. So uh, I asked for his name and his number, and I told him, I said, "Look, obviously right now is not a good time." And I told him I'd call him sometime, and maybe we'd meet for coffee, and I'd thank him again for the prayer. So that's what happened.
Wow. That's pretty amazing timing on his part.
Yeah, I kind of wondered if maybe the guy was an angel,
uh,
because most people would have just froze up, or they
yeah.
would have turned and run away
Yeah.
at that point. So
Yeah. Yeah. Um, wow. And did they say, was there anything in particular at the conference or on the videos that they saw that was so offensive to them, or did they give you no information?
no, they all they said was, "We can't have a minister on our staff that has this kind of association."
Mm,
And
I'm
like I
a,
said, when I tried to engage with them, uh, they just didn't want to engage. And one of the elders was getting pretty short and pretty angry, and
wow.
so I thought, there's no point. I just said okay, and I signed their paper, and I asked them to sign my copy, and so at least we were all in agreement on what just happened. And the next 2 hours, my wife and I made about 6 trips in the back of our car to get all of the books that, if you've seen the little video that I put out on my YouTube channel, and Celebrate Truth and others have posted on Facebook, then you see that there's 20 years worth of books and folders and files and knickknacks and everything that I've been carrying in my offices for at least the last 15 years full time preaching.
Wow.
So
Before right there, this is a great time. Share your the name of your YouTube channel and how else other people can get a hold of
yeah,
you.
so the first YouTube channel that I started, I just had a couple of videos on giants and angels and Nephilim, and a little intro vid. I just really didn't know where this channel might even go, and it was a public YouTube channel, but it wasn't associated with my name, and so I had it as Discerning Dad 73. So Discerning Dad 73 was what I came up with, because my kids had encouraged me to do a YouTube channel and do some teaching on some of the things that I had learned. And so I've always thought that discernment was an important uh, gift to have. And when I was young, my mom told me, she says, "Nate, I think you have the gift of discernment." And I thought that an odd statement. And I had thought much about that for years, but I just decided that maybe what my mom told me was true, and my kids had encouraged me to do so. So I started it up as Discerning Dad 73. And then with all the events of new stuff happening and the firing, I just decided that I needed to start a brand new one today that I could carry forward and see where this goes. And so I started a new channel today that's called Fired for Truth. So you can look up Fired, FIRED, for FOR Truth, and you'll see the video that I did in my garage when I shared, here's what happened. And so I would like to try to get most people moved over to the Fired for Truth one, but there are a couple of videos on Discerning Dad 73 that people can check out, and we'll just have to see where this goes.
Okay, I'll put links in the description for both of those
Okay, thank
accounts.
you.
And so those of you guys watching, I encourage you to go over to Nate's channels and hit the subscribe and the notification bell. He's got a lot of great videos coming out soon. And And I'll link that 2.5 minute one that I saw this morning about all your tables of books and decades of I can't imagine all the trips it took and hauling all that.
Oh,
And I don't know if you know this, but books aren't particularly light.
yeah. Well, my lower back was killing me. Trust me. I had to take some Advil and drink some water and try to stretch and relax after that. But um, the funny thing was, is I don't know why I'd made that video. I was sitting on the couch and returning messages from different people, and I knew that I needed to put something fresh on my YouTube and on my Facebook. And I decided, you know what? There's all this stuff in the garage. I mean, I just decided to go out in the garage and just share a couple of minutes, of what I really was feeling at the time. And I've been impressed with the response. I mean, I had people call me today to say, "Hey, I watched your little video about you in the garage sharing, from your heart," and they said that just really touched them, and I didn't think the video was really going to be anything but just, "Hey, an intro. Here's what happened. More coming soon. Pray for me."
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I
but
got
just
it.
that,
Well, I do want to say your call yesterday morning
yeah,
is that it was a very positive, optimistic call. Like when you called and were sharing what happened, and
yeah,
you were, just letting me know you were so hopeful and optimistic for your future that there was no whining, there was no griping. It
yeah,
was, to me, it was a very, you felt like this was the next chapter and that you're feeling very optimistic. And that you were thankful that it was a, black and white decision, that it
yeah,
wasn't, you know what I mean? So, but I just want everybody to know that it's your spirit and how you've been about all this has been a great example to me and countless other people. And
thank you.
so and so that brings us to today is, you texted me what this morning again. And so from
Yeah,
yesterday, getting, I forget what word you used, but just
yeah. I think I was just basically saying like the
when you,
the
yeah,
spirit the spirit that was in the room was not the normal spirit that I encountered with these men, because these are good men, and most of the time I've had a good relationship with them. And what I felt like it was a spiritual attack.
okay,
And I'm not saying they're not responsible for their own behavior, but I really felt like at that point, for whatever reason, they were just on a one track mind. Like no matter what I mean, Jesus could have manifested next to me and I would still been fired. That was
wow,
the feeling I got. So I really did feel, and after I talked with a few people and described to them, it was just surreal. It was like, is this happening? I mean, um, and I don't wish any, ill towards the church or towards the brothers. I don't want to cause any division, and so I'm being very careful about, specifics. But I felt like for whatever reason they had allowed Satan to blind their minds to even considering anything. Now, they did say they watched some videos, but they
wow.
didn't tell me which videos they watched. And so they saw, for whatever reason, they saw enough with their eyes to say to themselves, "Whoa, whatever." It freaked them out for whatever reason. And but the problem was is that they never asked me, "Okay, Nate, so you went to this conference and there's some things on there that are new to us or different. We weren't expecting that or whatever. But tell us why you went. You know, what kind of lessons did you go to? What were you there for? What were you hoping to gain from it? Were you just investigating? Is this something you're 100% convicted on?" But there was none of that, and so that was the big disappointment for me. But like you said, I we had been praying fervently about this for a couple of weeks before the conference, and then after the conference, just really as focused as we've ever been in prayer. And you remember I told you uh, when I first talked to you a few days after the conference, I said, "Look, God is doing something with this, and I don't know what it is yet." But I told you, we wanted to
Oh, oh,
decisions,
there.
but we didn't even get that far because it was just a couple of weeks. and this event was literally forced upon me. Um,
Wow.
they
Give
were
it
gonna, yeah,
give a little
yeah,
insight if you don't mind with
yeah.
how did it come about to go to this conference to take on the world 18 and
So
then
yeah.
how was it there
Okay,
at the
so
conference?
I'll tell you just real quick. It was, I have to tell you a little bit farther back then to set that up, because what happened was about a year and a half ago. No, it was a year ago in the early spring. I don't keep a diary, so I don't have it all written down, but it was like maybe March, a year ago, March. And I had been asked by a congregation up north of me to be a speaker on a Wednesday night for a summer Wednesday night series. And it was an apologetics theme series. And I had been just assigned the topic of the flood. And I was pretty jazzed up about that because that was exciting. And so I had done some research and some study, and put a PowerPoint presentation together, and was kind of ready for some things for the sharing of that. And couple of months before I went to speak, because they gave me a lot of notice, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm just going to watch a couple videos, see if I can find any decent videos about the flood. So I found one or two that I thought were pretty good, and I watched them. And after I watched the second, I think it might have been the second video on the flood, second or third video, and the sidebar, there was a couple of videos on YouTube that were suggested, recommended, that popped up. Two or three of them said something about flat Earth, and one of them, I believe, was Celebrate Truth, Robbie's Global Eye. And so those kind of caught my attention, and it was either the Global Lie was the first one I watched. There was another one which was Leisure X had like a 2 hour and something long deal on flat Earth, and it wasn't long before I ended up on Mark Sargent's Flat Earth Clues,
Hmm.
and the list goes on and on. And I just dove into this thing. Like my wife actually was like, Nate, what are you doing over there? For like the next 2 weeks, I'm like every free moment, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm home. I'm off work. The kids aren't home from school. Let me see if I can sneak in, 15-minute video on something related to this deal. And so then, about a year or so went by after that, and watched many videos, had many discussions with my wife and kids, and encouraged all of my kids, who are teenagers and young adults, to search it out for themselves. And so about 3 to 4 weeks before the conference happened, I don't know how I missed it, because I was watching videos and I was on Celebrate Truth's live stream, at least a couple times a week, checking out things, saying hi in the chat. And I ended up getting a text message from my wife, and she's like, Nate, she sent me a link, and she's like, hey, check this out. And I was like, okay, what's that? I clicked on it, and immediately, of course, I recognized a lot of the speakers, and I recognized, Chris and Liz Bailey from seeing them all over the place, on YouTube. And so we checked into it, and I was like, where's this at? Vermilion, Ohio, where's that? And it ended up being just over an hour from where we're at. And when she got home, we talked about it, and we said, man, we gotta go to this. And so, I had vacation time, got that approved to take vacation. And we really needed a vacation anyway, because summer had been busy and back to school was just crazy. We have, one kid that was going off to college, and two high schoolers getting ready to go back to high school. And so we really needed a after school blitz, getaway weekend. And so the price was so reasonable, and the event looked like an amazing event. The venue looked really great. And so that's how we found out about it. And looking back, I see it had to have been the providence of God working, because we could have easily just not seen that. My wife could have easily not seen that ad.
Hmm.
I don't even remember where she saw it, but she messaged me, and so we signed up. Back and forth emails with Chris Bailey, and he made sure that I knew, what I needed to do to get ready for this. And so we went, and we were just blown away, by what we experienced. And now, with so many different breakout sessions and speakers, we were only probably able to go to like 20%,
Mm-hmm.
of what you could go to.
Yep.
And so that's what frustrated me about the elders. They had this paper drafted up that I was fired before they even came to the meeting.
Wow.
So that tells you that they had already made their decision. And even if I'm trying to, understand that, what I don't understand is how can you just make an assumption that every single thing that was shared there, taught there, believed there, automatically meant that my wife and I believed everything.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the stuff we didn't, most of the stuff we weren't even able to go to. So I couldn't even tell you, yes, I believe in that, or no, I don't. But
Yep.
I can say that most of the stuff that we went to that was related to biblical cosmology, um, a lot of the evening keynotes, a lot of breakout sessions. Your three sessions were really great. Your book, just I was like, wow, this is a wonderful resource. And I didn't have a lot of funds that weekend, but I was like, okay, there's like two or three books I have the money to buy, and I'm like, I'm not leaving without one of these books. And so, we went to Michael Solomon's presentations,
Mm-hmm.
which were just amazing. And his expertise with, videography and camera and just all of that. Um, so, my wife went to different breakouts. She went to some of the ones that I couldn't go to because I was, going to these other biblical cosmology tracks. But she went to some of the other ones about people and abuse and
Oh yeah. Yep.
vaccinations and just different things. And so we we just were blown away by the quality of the seminar, of the conference. The venue was just amazing, and and then the spirit of the people that was there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
most of the people there we just had never met. I mean, almost every single person we'd never met in person. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Probably nobody actually. Only emails or watching videos, or maybe talking to one or two people on the phone about the conference. So the spirit there just seemed like, even though it was a diverse group of people, not everybody, was even convinced of, biblical cosmology, flat Earth, whatever you want to call it. But everybody there seemed to have just a very Christian spirit, um, you know, and that really made an impression on me
Yeah.
and my wife. And
Yep.
so I don't know if that helps kind of explain. But the big disappointment, other than obviously getting a text message out of the blue and then being fired, uh, the big disappointment was I had no opportunity to share, and judgments were made
Mm-hmm.
with no consideration given to me. So, but you know what? On the other hand, I know that they felt, and for whatever reason, they felt like they were making a decision that they need to make. So, um, but I guess the big issue was, what does this mean? And like you said, we've been praying about this so much. It was apparent to me that this was such a strong answer to prayer. And the way I looked at it was, this is your answer. You now are completely free of any responsibilities, ties, commitments, contracts, whatever. And you have no choice now but to either do this full speed ahead and keep praying and see where God is leading you, or basically just sit on the couch and mope and say, man, I just got fired. What am I going to do? How am I going to feed my family? What are people going to think about us? How are my kids going to react? And all those things went through my mind. But I have to say, it has to be prayer,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to be God, because
Yep.
I can't explain otherwise how this could
Yep.
happen.
Well,
So,
and talk about today. So
yeah.
your text message. Here, I want to pull up this text message
Okay.
because
Yeah. Go for it.
this is what I woke up to
Yeah.
today. Well, not what I woke up to, but this is the first message I saw today. Was let's see. Oh, we texted a lot back and forth
Yeah.
after that. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Bro, God is blowing this thing up in a big way, and I mean real big and in a positive way. You can call me if you're free. Otherwise, talk with you anytime that works for you. Thank you so much for your prayers and support and friendship. I'm very excited about what's ahead.
Yeah.
And that really, it really is a testament to how you were yesterday and how you were today. But then give a little insight into who have you been talking to today that has been just supporting you, and what has
Wow.
it been like? Has it just been an overwhelming surge of support?
Yeah. I mean, really, it started yesterday afternoon. Of course, I spoke with you. Um, then I spoke with Rick Hummer. I had just messaged him on Facebook, right? Because he seemed like such an approachable guy, and
Yeah.
he just seemed like he was your friend the moment that he shook your hand. And he was part of the group of speakers. Yourself, Michael, Robbie, all these other guys. I called them the Basement Brigade. Just because it just was such a cool atmosphere down there. It felt like just a bunch of family meeting together, and that was odd to me, but in a good way. And so, this situation really blossomed because Rick reached out to several people, and he said, Nate, he says, this is an answer to prayer, and he's like, this is God telling you, get ready. And he just said, hey, I'm gonna talk to everybody I know. And I thought he was just kind of joking, like I was just kind of like, oh, that's awesome. This guy's taking the time to talk to me. He's very encouraging, and he was dead serious. So he's calls Robbie Davidson, and he's talking to Rob Skiba, and he's talking to a bunch of people. And so I start getting text messages, with people's contact information. And he's like, hey, Robbie wants you to reach out to him. Rob Skiba, man, he's wrapped up in some stuff right now. He's extremely busy, but, he wants you to talk. And so I just started making phone calls, and Dean Odell reached out to me. I had messaged him on Facebook, and he's super busy right now. He's getting ready for Skyfall 18 conference, and he was gracious enough to call me. So I just basically was bombarded with either call after call after call, or I called the people, those contacts that I was given. Robbie Davidson, Rob Skiba. I talked to Michael Solomon. I talked to Chris Bailey. Chris Bailey called me, and it was their anniversary yesterday. So I had left him a message that I got fired for attending the conference, and I don't think he checked it at the time because he was getting ready for dinner, with his bride, and but he recognized on his phone that Robbie had called him several times. So he's like, well, I better call Robbie. And so he tells me, he says, Robbie talks to him, and Robbie says, hey, man, did you hear the news? And he's like, Chris is like, no, what? And he's like, about Nathan. And of course, there's a lot of important Nathans in this movement, uh, and at least one of them was at the conference. Was it Nathan Reynolds was at the conference, and you got Nathan Roberts. You got those are at least two big ones I know of. So he was like, which Nathan? And I'd only met Robbie really at the conference, and he didn't know me, and so he's like, he's trying to remember what my name, last name was, and he's like, oh yeah, Nate Wolfe, preacher Nate, yeah, and so Chris was like, what happened? And Robbie told him, he got fired for association with the conference, basically for attending the conference. And so Chris was kind of like, whoa, and so I spent several hours on the phone yesterday with many of the people I mentioned to you, and then today back and forth with several of the same folks, and just encouraging me, giving me words of advice, praying for me, inviting me to come to some of these other conferences. Um, so I'm looking into that. Obviously, the situation with the church, their decision forced my hand, but it also opened things up completely, because I would have preferred that I would have been given an opportunity to share with them, and maybe over a period of weeks or months, that maybe a relationship and the word could have developed. And at least if they weren't going to believe everything, at least that we would have had a chance to study it through and I could hear out my position. But that opportunity was absolutely not given. And so to me, it was God answering my prayer.
Yep.
And you're free. And yeah, you won't have a check after several weeks, but you know, I just felt that the reason why, you describe how I was to you on the phone was because I felt completely at peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't explain why, but I thought about the peace that passes all understanding.
Yep.
And I thought, if I had just been a guy who had been fired and nobody had reached out to me, and if I hadn't met you at the conference, this could have turned out very differently.
Mm-hmm.
I could have just been depressed, wondering what to do, fearful. So I 100% know that
Mm-hmm.
this was God working. So I
Yep.
praise Him for that, and I thank you and others for reaching out to me. And I think you and I have a very similar personality, so we kind of and some similar backgrounds in a sense, as far as our journey. Um, so that worked out really well. I'm just very thankful. And then tonight, uh, social media just blew up, and people are sharing this left and right. They're sharing my video. Robbie Davidson and others are sharing it and mirroring things on their YouTube, and it just things were happening so fast. I could not even click on all the notifications. And so I finally just had to like shut down my laptop for a little bit and prepare to talk with you. I thought, well, I can't keep up anyway, so hopefully folks will be patient for me to message them back and friend them. I want to take this slowly with social media as slow as I can, but it doesn't look like I'm going to be given that opportunity right now. So I only can see this as God doing this, and so why would I pray for something amazing to happen and then try to stop it from happening? I couldn't stop it now if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So I only can give credit to God and thank everybody for their support.
Yep.
So one day at a time from here on out.
Yeah. I've looked at some of the comments on Facebook about your testimony about this, and nothing but 100% support that I saw in there. It's just,
Well,
what would you say to other pastors or other people in your same shoes that are going through something similar to this?
yeah, I would say that there's probably a lot of people in ministry that have either started to get fired for this kind of a thing, whether they were actively teaching on it, approached it with someone in the church or maybe leadership, or maybe like what happened with me, that, you just had nosy, gossipy people who had nothing better to do than stalk their minister while he was on vacation with his wife, and somehow stumbled upon some things and made some connections and informed the leadership, you know. And so I think every person's situation in ministry is going to be different. But in talking with Robbie and others this week, Rob Skiba, Dean Odell, these guys are all getting emails very often from ministers who either A, have gotten fired for speaking out about it, or just trying to share it, or there are many, many ministers that are basically just in the closet right now on their beliefs because they're afraid that if they even share it, or if somebody knows that they went to this conference or, posted something online, that they're going to end up just like me,
Hmm.
where they get called in and fired on the spot. I would say to them that I guess you have to ask yourself the question, if that's you, if you've been fired, you need to pray to God about it. And I know everybody's situation is going to be different, what God does. But I would say to every person that's been fired because of this in ministry, that they need to pray, they need to humble themselves, make sure that they trust in the Lord, and ask God, God, what do you want me to do? Because if people are in the word, they're in prayer, and they're seeking the will of God, we know 100% that God is going to see them through, and He's going to work all things out together for good, for those that love Him and are called according to His purpose. Now, that might look 100 different ways. It might happen like what's happening to me now. It might just be that they move on, take another ministry job, or maybe they have to do something different. I know of a brother who got fired. It had nothing to do with flat earth, but he ended up becoming a trucker. He was like, I can't work with congregations anymore. I got to do something different. And he ended up becoming a trucker. So everybody's situation is different. For for those who are still in a church setting, whether they're paid ministry staff or lay ministry staff or just Christians, you don't have to be a minister to find yourself in this situation. Robbie Davidson shares that his family was basically kicked out of two churches just as members for
Wow.
having beliefs and being outspoken in a firm but loving and biblical way. And so I would say that, not to be harsh, but ministers that are running scared, you have to ask yourself the question, who are you trusting in? Are you trusting in man? Are you trusting in the Lord that you are claiming to serve?
Hmm.
And I'm not trying to be haughty or harsh, but what the last few months have showed me, and especially these last few days, is you have to decide who you serve, and you have to decide if the praise of God or the praise of men is more important. You have to decide if your faith is strong enough that you're willing to stick your neck out for truth
Hmm.
and say, whatever happens, I'm still going to serve God at the end.
Hmm.
So I feel confident that God will work it out. It doesn't mean that it's going to be fast or easy. I just can't believe how fast this has happened. And I didn't do really any of this. I reached out for some comfort and some advice, and a bunch of other people just ran with it, and it's growing, and I'm just overwhelmed, and I'm just praying that this will be a great opportunity to encourage people, who maybe are in the same or similar shoes as I'm in, my family's in. So
Yeah, I would say it's what you did was keep the faith is what it really is evident to me. And you played your part and are playing your part. And Proverbs 3:5-8,
yeah,
trust in the Lord in some of your ways. No, it's
yeah,
all of your ways, and lean not on your own understanding. And so that has been such a key for me as well. I couldn't have said it any better. You said it perfect. And
thank you.
but that's totally true. And I think understanding that, and especially I think as you mature in the Lord and say um that that trust and that doing what you're called to do, it's at first it's the choose you this day. And so
Yeah,
the infant Christian, and then as time goes on, it does, too much is given, much is required. And so
yeah,
it's what are you willing to stick your neck out for? And especially mature Christians that have been in the trenches for a long time.
yeah,
I find it really amazing how we can get canned or we can get ostracized for
yeah,
standing on God's word and what it says.
yeah,
I find that amazing, and especially the fact that you went to a Take on the World conference. And how does the Bible describe the world
yeah,
versus God? And so it's like you take on the world should be a very, very good thing for any Christians. It should be a
yeah,
very obvious thing that we do.
yeah,
Yet you get canned for going to a Take on the World conference. You
yeah.
gotta see the irony in that.
Well, yeah, it was interesting. And as I posted on my Facebook earlier, I tagged George Moss on there because his song "Take on the World" was going through my mind like constantly. My wife said last night I was talking in my sleep, and I said, "Oh, really? What was I saying?" She's like, "Well, it really wasn't intelligible." But she's like, "You weren't upset." She's like, "So obviously your mind and your subconscious was work." But I just can't get that song out of my head because when he was singing it and we were there, I thought it was very cool. But honestly, I wasn't into it probably like I should have been, and probably wasn't supporting him in that like I should. But it was also new, and I was just trying to really listen to lyrics really because I thought the lyrics were very good. But looking back on it, wow. it made that song made a deep impression on me, and I think I get it now. If
Hmm.
I don't get it now, I don't know when I would.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that his efforts, and I appreciate the song. And like I said, in the video that I posted, that's good.
Oh, you're cutting out for a sec. Oh, there you are. Sorry, you cut
You
out for a
got me
second.
back?
You're back.
Okay.
You're back.
So the conferences that I've been to in ministry, most of them have been very good and, encouraging and helped me to grow in a lot of ways in my faith and in my study of the word. And there's always been great fellowship, but I can't explain exactly what we experienced out at Take on the World. It's like something I never experienced. And like I said, generally the spirit that I felt there, it felt like God to me. It felt like the spirit of God. And honestly, it felt like something that I had been missing. And that's all I can say about that. And so, Chris and Liz Bailey and everybody, and Now You See TV and all those, everybody that came, it was a group effort. And so many people made an impression on me with their testimonies. And I thought, if I get a chance to share a testimony and share truth, that'd be great. But honestly, until I got fired, um, the only testimony I had was that I'd been in prayer about it, and I'd been to a conference, and I'd been studying for a year and a half. And, that's good. That's good enough. Uh, and that I was seeking how I can share truth. But until I got fired, it was really not complete. I don't think I was ready.
Mm.
But obviously, God thought
Yeah.
you're ready. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's do this.
Yeah.
I would
No.
have preferred, waiting a few months or even a couple of years, to get everything kind of worked out. And
Yeah.
honestly, we were hoping to stay with the church here for at least 3 more years because
Wow.
my youngest daughter doesn't graduate high school for 3 years, and so I thought minimum of 3 more years and hopefully beyond that, you
Yep.
know, because we really had no desire to leave.
Hmm.
We love the people there, and most of the time, we've been treated very well. And so this was just a very big shock to our system.
Wow. And if anyone feels led or called to support you, whether it's with, do you have an email that you're giving out? Or,
Yeah, they could email me at, let's see, the best email would probably be my Gmail, and that would be discerningdad73 at
okay.
gmail.com.
Okay.
And discerning, make sure you spell that right because it fouls people up. But discerningdad73 at gmail.com. I'll try to put a link maybe in one of the videos I posted, and you can feel free to do that. I've just been inundated with messages, so it's probably going to take me like 3 days just to see what all notifications came in, and who can I talk with, and who do I need to message back. So please be patient with me. You know, I'm assuming that tomorrow is when the leadership of the church is going to share with the congregation that I've been fired. Um, and so tomorrow we kind of just try to keep our schedule clear because we felt like we may get calls, we may get people coming over to our home after church tomorrow, and we don't know what to expect. There might be some angry people. There might be some people asking, Nate, what are you doing? There might be some people that are devastated that I was fired and want to know why. And
Hmm.
so the few people that we've spoken with, I've just said, hey, if you want to, if anybody comes to you and asks you what's going on, please have them come to us, you know, at least hear our side of what was going on, and then make a decision from there, make a judgment, and go from there. But I have a feeling like tomorrow might be kind of a ministry heavy day. It could end up be one of the busiest days of ministry that I've ever had and not been employed by a congregation. So, if that's the Lord's will, then I'll welcome that. But yeah, I'm very excited to be, talking with you, and you are really the first person that I hit it off with. So it's kind of fitting that, I'm doing this interview with you. But I'm very excited as well. On Monday evening, I'll be doing a interview with Robbie Davidson and Celebrate Truth. And I'm sure there'll be other opportunities, which, I'm praying daily, and trying to be discerning and be careful.
Yeah.
I don't want to do too much too fast, but at the same time, if this is what God has brought me to, then who am I to say, okay, we got to slow this thing down a little
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
you know?
It's that saying that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Yeah. So,
But also, I mean, I really got to say is that the guts it takes, and I should say more than guts, it's the faith that it takes, like you said, to lean out and do what God told you to do. And so there's
yeah.
so many people that I've seen in the pulpit, or that your finances depend on staying within this box, and don't
Yes.
go outside this box and you'll be okay. And you
Yeah.
could have stayed in your box. You could have, you know, just, drew between the lines,
Yeah.
but you have been called and you've been led to grow and to learn more and to do more, and through prayer. And it's not like you were even preaching anything that at
No,
all.
no. The
And
only, to be 100% clear, you know, I said in my video that's being posted in my garage that we hadn't posted anything public. And that's true in the sense that, I had a public Facebook page. My wife has a public Facebook page. I have, Instagram and all that. And we didn't post anything. The only account of any kind that was public that I had was just for the last few months. I had the Discerning Dad 73 YouTube account, which didn't have my name, and so the only way somebody from the church could have even found out that I had that would be to basically stumble upon it. And, I only had a few videos on it, and I think 17 or 14 subscribers. So, um, you know, that you could say was public, and it was some videos. And if they watched my introduction video, then they could have seen who I was, and get a feeling for where I was and what I was doing. But we purposely didn't put anything public other than that. My wife had one second Instagram account, which was very private, and she went to great lengths to try to make it private, didn't have her name in it. Um, but there was one individual or a couple of individuals that uh, had seen some stuff on there, and somehow they thought it might be her, and they found out that it was her and that she believed in flat Earth, and and of course they didn't ask her; they just were
yeah,
gossiping. That was about a week before the conference. We had
okay,
just one weekend where that was kind of like a few people were causing us some stress, and we tried to talk to people directly if we could, and it seemed to kind of be die down. So yeah, I mean, my wife and I, we went to great lengths to try to make sure that we wouldn't do anything to
hmm
cause any problem in the church.
yeah,
But now with everybody making these connections and sharing, I mean, um, it's obviously people are going to find out about it, and my prayer is just that there's no unnecessary division in the church,
yeah,
and that people will seek the truth for themselves, and that they'll give me the courtesy that I was not given by my leadership
hmm
to give an account,
yeah. Well, it's like,
for
oh, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
like
go ahead.
when Jesus came, he
Yeah.
said, "Do not think I've come to bring peace, but a sword,
Yes.
right? To divide
Yes.
such and such from such and such, and
Yeah.
mother from kids." And
Yeah.
so it's like when you stand on God's word and you stand on the truth, it's going to be divisive. And so,
Yeah.
and let me share a quick story real quick, because
Sure.
this
Yeah.
this your testimony sounds similar to another guy I know. He's a pastor at a smaller church, and what happened
Hmm.
was is everything was going great until all of a sudden he started going, he was preaching the truth, but it fell
Yep.
outside of the box that the leadership of the church had assigned him to. And so he kept
Hmm.
getting, no, you need to not talk about this and not talk about that. And he was like, no, this is what I feel led to talk about. And it was
Yeah.
completely biblical, what he was saying.
Sure.
Well, they were at a little committee meeting, and he pulls out the Bible and says, here, I think this will help the problem, because there was a discussion against, what was being said. And they said,
Yeah.
that has no place in this meeting.
Wow.
and so it's that should be a
Yeah.
pretty big red flag there. Well,
Yeah.
what they ended up doing was they ended up telling the tithe members, the members to
Yeah.
tithe that because that was his most of his pay was coming from tithes, and
Yeah.
obviously, and so they said we need more money for missions, and so to
Mm.
direct the money to they directed the congregation to direct the money to missions, so therefore it cut his pay, I mean, drastically.
Yeah.
And so, but he still stuck with it, still stuck with it. He was working for
Yeah.
almost free,
Wow.
and they ended up just it's something similar to what you did, because he
Yeah.
basically said I'll work for free, and he was doing that, and then they just ganged up on him. And
Yeah.
then what wound up happening was a group of people felt led to go there at that meeting, similar to what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and literally they walked around the whole building praying for him. So when he came out from your experience, there was a group of people that had been out there praying for him, and he had no idea about that. And the next, like within a week, I want to say it was the next day, but within a week, he found another smaller church down the street, and half the congregation, went
Yeah.
with him. And so, that's his testimony. But it's just kind of what your testimony reminded me of his. But
Yeah.
it's just amazing how preaching the truth can.
Yeah.
Some people don't want to hear it. It falls outside of their box that they've
Yeah.
chosen. You know this and
Yeah.
no
And I
further.
want to, say just real quick, there's really nothing special about me. There's some specific things in the way this happened that are probably unique, but there are many, many good, faithful ministers who are imperfect, but really trying to serve God and their congregations that, according to the guys I mentioned, that spoke with me the last 48 hours and all the emails and calls that they get, there are many, many ministers that have been fired for the very same topic, maybe
Hmm.
little different circumstances, the timing
Yep.
and how things went and how things were delivered. But there have been many ministers fired over this, and there have been many just believers, members of congregations that have been ostracized or kicked out or, basically hassled. And so, what I'm hoping that this will do, and I know in talking with Robbie and his, situation being run out of churches twice, he and I and others that I've talked to are hoping that what this will do is it will force an eye to be put on this situation. It'll force some discussion. It
Yep.
may also embolden and strengthen and lift up some of the people who are in the trenches that they don't know what to do, and
Hmm.
they're afraid, and they're deciding, do I take a stand with the word of God? Do I pray about this and just go wherever God sends me? Or do they just, well, I got to stay in these parameters, to be safe, to keep my job, to keep my paycheck. And certainly I'm under no illusion that to lose 60% of your income, your family income, and you've got four children, and one in college, that's a big deal.
Hmm.
But I have had the same peace about the financial end of it
Yep.
as I've had about the prayer end of it, about getting fired. And again, I wish the best for this congregation, and I hope that in some way, shape, or form, at least some people at the church and maybe even some of the leadership there will take another look at this. You
Hmm.
know, what's done is done with me.
Yeah.
But maybe a seed will be planted and will take root, and God can use this for His glory, in some way, shape, or form. So,
Hmm. I just think, I applaud your, like I said, your faith, your boldness, I guess you could say, but just your willingness to do what God called you to do. And I think what really needs to happen is there needs to be more people like you, like me, that are willing
yes,
to you want to say stick your neck out. It's here I am, choose me, send
yes,
me. And
yes,
so I'm willing to go outside. I'm willing to have friends and family look at me and go, what did he say? What does he believe? I believe
yes,
what the Bible says,
yeah,
and the Bible goes against in a lot of ways what the world says, if not most ways. And
yeah,
so we just need, more people being willing to do what you did and just have that faith and that peace. But that
Yes.
comes from God. It does not come naturally to man. It comes from him and
Yeah.
being in
Yeah.
prayer. And
Absolutely.
yeah. And so,
Serving which God supplies. That's what the scriptures teach. And I would also just add real quick that if somebody finds themselves in just a difficult situation like this, they need to reach out to somebody.
mm,
They need to get prayer support. And,
yeah.
one of the most difficult things in congregational ministry is that anytime you have any kind of major conflict, you can't say anything to anyone in the church. If you
Mm,
have friends in the church, you can't say anything about it. And so many people suffer in silence
yeah.
because they're afraid of, being accused of gossip or, slipping up somehow, making the problem worse. And if you've been somewhere for years and you move to a city that you didn't know anybody, but you moved to a city to serve a congregation, that congregation is could be mostly your whole life. I mean, unless you made friends in the community and made inroads in the community, even then, your friends in the community, you're going to go to them and say, "Hey, I'm really struggling with the leadership at my church," or I'm feeling like quitting ministry, or who can you tell? Um, so you got to reach out to anybody that you feel is trustworthy in faith, and somebody who will give you good advice according to the Word of God, and somebody that'll just be a listening ear. I think that'll go a long way. And
Yeah.
if I can be that for somebody, I'm only one person, but people have been there for me, and so I'm definitely going to do everything that I can um, to do this. And I don't know if we have time to share this, but I mentioned to you about 2 years ago, I had it on my heart, at least it was my desire, my will to at least part time in my free time and my available time to minister to ministers. And so I started a Facebook page and I made some contacts, and I was reaching out to people. I was trying to find ways that I could encourage ministers who were either facing discouragement in their congregational work or crisis. And I had some big opportunities. And all of a sudden, those got slammed, those doors got slammed shut. And so I was disappointed, but I thought, you know what? God's telling me no. And in talking to Robbie Davidson yesterday and others, uh, pretty much what I was hearing from Robbie was he's saying, "Hey, Nate, it sounds to me like God is calling you to share this and minister to ministers
Mm,
and everybody, but ministers specifically." And it clicked in my mind that maybe 2 years ago, what I wanted to start was a good thing, and maybe it was God's plan to use me to minister to other servants, full-time servants. But maybe my idea was just not going to do it, and God's using this perhaps as the way to say, I'm answering your prayer just in a different way than you even could
mhm.
imagine.
It's like you acknowledged and you felt that drawing and that seed in you to minister to ministers, but
Yeah.
the timing and the circumstances wasn't ready yet.
But
You know.
the people I think that can minister the most effective are the ones who have been through some stuff
Yeah. Yeah.
because they know what it's like. They've been in the trenches. They know also that if you are faithful and you trust in the Lord, that He will see you through. And,
Hmm.
we can comfort one another with the comfort that we have been comforted with. I mean, that is 100% truthful. And
Yeah.
so I'm just very hopeful that this can fulfill that somehow. And, yeah, so I just wanted to share that because sometimes we get a door or several doors slammed shut. It doesn't necessarily mean no forever. It may manifest itself in some different way or years down the road. And so I really
Yep.
can't help but think that whatever God has me do in this new ministry, this new opportunity is going to be connected to what I was praying about 2 years ago before I even had any ideas about biblical cosmology or anything else. That wasn't even on the
Hmm.
radar when I wanted to start this other ministry. So,
Yeah. It's the ask and keep on asking, seek and keep
yes,
on seeking, knock and keep on knocking.
yes,
You just
yeah,
keep going. And I think
Yeah.
that's a great lesson for all of us. And it really goes to show the power of testimony as well. At
Yes.
the Take on the World in Ohio, it's just the power of people's testimony really came through. And
Yeah.
I know Nathan Reynolds said, he quoted from Revelation 12:11, if I remember right, where it's, they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, the word of the testimony,
Yeah.
not loving their lives unto death.
Yes.
And so, I mean, that is a very good formula.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many things I wish I could have gone to that, you can't be in two places at once. And honestly, the biggest letdown of the whole weekend at the conference for us was having to leave. And
Yeah. Yep.
uh, we ended up leaving right before the last evening panel, started, and we were bummed out, but it was things were running behind, and we had to drive home in an hour and 10 minutes to the kids, and we were exhausted, in a
Yeah.
good way. So we had to cut out. But the next few days, I was so encouraged, but at the same time, I felt like, it was almost like a letdown. Like, man, we had to leave that place, you know. And so I was like, I can't wait till Take on the World 19.
Yeah. It's funny that night too. That's the panel that I actually referenced you in the audience.
I watched the video, bro. I watched the video like several days after that, and I was just like, could have had a V8 moment, like
No, that's funny.
you're like,
No, it's
Nate,
all
is Nate
good.
is Nate here? And yeah, I was like, oh man, I let Chad down. uh,
No, that's funny. But so do you have plans for other conferences coming up at all?
well, I was talking. It's funny you mentioned that because the other thing I was lamenting was, well, I used up a bit of vacation for this weekend, and I had other things coming up this fall, and I really couldn't take more time off because I had important ministry things to do, and I had some pulpit swaps lined up with different ministers, and in the region, and so I had a lot of busy, important things to do in the church, and I was like, man, I've been studying this for a year and a half, and I've never been to a you know Flat Earth International Conference. And I thought, man, it would be amazing to go to Denver in November, and I just didn't know if I could do that. And then I was talking to Dean Odell, and he was mentioning that it's not too late to think about coming to Skyfall. But anyway, I just got a notification my battery is down to about 20%. So
Okay. Okay.
so I
Well,
apologize for that, but
no, it's all good. We'll wrap it up here in a few. But
yeah,
yeah, and then there's Question Everything 2019. That's in February.
is that
Uh,
in
that's
California?
in California. Yep,
Yeah,
just outside of LA.
that would be
It's
a far away
that's
trip, but
it's a little bit of a drive for you,
it'd be
but
something definitely at least to get on the website and check
yeah,
out. Yeah,
yeah. So there's a whole bunch of conferences coming up here in the near future,
nice.
and so I guess we'll end with this too. Is so Monday you're
Yeah,
with Robbie Davidson being
yes,
interviewed on Celebrate Truth, and
yeah,
then let's see what else should people know. So right now, also, not that you've asked for it, but you're setting up a Patreon and another account just for if anyone
yeah,
feels led, if they feel like this is what God wants them to do, is support you at least through uh,
yeah.
however they do it, if it's however they want to do it. But just if you want to share that, that'd be great.
Yeah, my plan is, my hope is that by Monday evening, by the time I'm on Robbie's show, his channel, that I will have a link to share for a Patreon account. And obviously that'll take some time to develop as far as content and connections, but at least to have a basic account set up with some information on what's this about, how you can support me, what am I doing? And then also, it was suggested to me to consider setting up a GoFundMe account because, like I said, if it was 5 years down the road and none of my kids were living in my home with me, I have. So yeah, so with kids at home, it's expensive, and I would just ask people to consider at that time whatever they pray about it, and
Yeah.
I just know this, that the Lord's going to provide one way or another. And if I
Amen.
set those accounts up, it's because people I trust and respect gave me that advice to say, you
Yep.
know what, you're going to need an income after a few weeks when your severance runs out. What are you going to do?
Hmm.
I own my own home, so I've got a mortgage. You know, I'm still paying on a couple of cars, and I got a freshman in college that just started this fall. So it's an expensive venture. So yeah, I'll try to give information for that when I interview with Robbie, and then I'll try to also share information with you when those are up.
Okay. Sounds
So
great.
thank you so
Well,
much.
great. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover? Because I think you did a fantastic job, and it's
Thank you.
getting to know people. This won't be the last time I have you on the channel.
Awesome.
Well,
Awesome. Yeah.
I know you've got other videos and other topics. I know the subject of giants. I find
Yeah.
that subject of giants just amazing.
Yeah.
You've got videos about chemtrails and
Yeah.
geoengineering, and then especially the biblical cosmology.
Yeah.
And so you and I have a lot of very similar interests. I think God has been
Yeah.
moving us into.
Yeah. On the new channel, Fired for Truth, on the new channel, I'm going to try to upload this next week or two some biblical cosmology, you know, basically just Bible lessons. You know, it's not going to be a fancy video. I'm not a videographer. You know, I was a stick figure guy. You know, even now, if you ask me to draw something, it'd probably be a stick figure. You know, and so I'm just going to start with some real basic stuff, and it's going to take me a little time to get some content up because everything's happening so quickly.
Yeah.
And like I said, I just got fired, you know, less than 48 hours ago, and I'm going to take opportunity to share and do that first. But if people want to like, you know, and subscribe and share and message me on Facebook, I, I just appreciate the prayers most of all. So
Yep.
yeah, I'd love to get back on with you. Apologize for my battery running low. You
No,
know.
it's all good.
Um,
I think you're running down to that time anyway. So that's
okay, yeah, yeah, we've been going at it long enough, I think, to really share what's been going on and what happened. And I just thank you so much for taking the time to have me on and share.
yeah. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, and I know it was very evident. I know one thing regarding the conference that I really got out of Take on the World 2018 was the fellowship. It felt like I'd met everybody before. And I know
Yes.
when I met you, it felt like I'd met you before, and it was just like this very peaceful
Yeah.
camaraderie amongst everybody.
Yeah.
And there was no quarreling. It was just very peaceful, and
Yeah.
it was fantastic. So I'm glad
Yeah.
we get to continue, the friendship that we started there, and
Yes.
I'm looking forward to having you on again.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll see you on Monday evenings. Celebrate Truth it's on Celebrate Truth channel. Is that right?
Yeah, it should be on Celebrate Truth. I'm sure they'll have that posted, and I think it's supposed to be around 9 p.m. Eastern time, Eastern Standard Time, U.S. So,
Perfect.
all
All
right.
right. Well, there
Thank you
you
so
have it.
much.
Thanks, Nate.
All right. Take care. God bless.